I was 23 when my life took a dramatic turn. I was sitting in a doctor's office and I heard the words stage 4 cancer. Only 3 in 100,000 people are diagnosed with this rare cancer. That means 0.003% of the population. At first, the weight of those odds felt almost surreal, and a wave of fear, shock, and confusion crashed over me. My mind started racing with questions. Why me? How could this happen? All of a sudden, the hospital walls started to close in, leaving me with very tightening space to breathe. Of course, this was a very hard moment in my life, not only because cancer is a personal illness, but because I knew exactly it's an illness that is isolating and touches everyone around you, family, friends, loved ones. However, after those initial moments of negative thoughts, something in me shifted. It was like my brain flipped a switch, a mental switch of mechanism that would later become my lifeline. It sounds very unusual, but here's what I mean. When I first heard those words, immediately after experiencing the negative emotions, right after it, I felt something in me just switch. And my mind just went to the future, positive, healthy, living, and thriving Olivia. And I wasn't realizing what exactly was happening in that specific moment. After I reflected, I realized that my mind was experiencing positive thoughts using one of the most powerful tools we have, visualization. But why is visualization powerful? You see, when I was experiencing myself in the future, I wasn't just picturing and imagining. It wasn't just wishful thinking. It was intentional imaging while feeling the emotions of that future. I had teletransported myself into the future, and I was seeing myself free from the burden of cancer, healthy, and living the life I deserved. At first, this sounded very strange to me as well, but it did become my anchor to having the life that I actually deserved. Neuroscience also backs the power of visualization. It was actually found by Pascual Leon in 2005 that visualization can literally restructure your brain. In this study, people that visualized practicing piano activated the same neural pathways as those who actually practiced them. Therefore, this shows that by rehearsing positive scenarios in our minds, we are more likely to make them occur in real life. Another landmark study by Spiegel et al. Proved that visualization can improve survival rates in cancer patients. Cancer patients that used visualization techniques showed reduced stress and improved survival rates. So in this way, by using this powerful technique, I wasn't just imagining, I was literally restructuring my brain to be conscious about what I believed and to have the future that I deserved. I was making my brain believe that healing and survival were the only possible outcomes. This belief made me anchor in the present moments and take all the fears and the pains away. Of course, there were hardships. And what I'm talking here about neuroscience and neural pathways, it wasn't just easy as it might seem, or as if I'm explaining it. There were hardships such as every day I felt my energy fade, my body weaken. Sometimes I would have great immense pains, and negativity and reality of my diagnosis would just creep in. But every single time that this happened, I just decided to switch it off. Just like a TV show that you just decide to stop watching. And it might seem like I was ignoring reality, but I was not. I was just choosing which mental story and narrative to focus on. By doing this, I was taking away the present moment's pain and believing on the future that I wanted to create for myself. There's also scientific evidence that meditation can restructure your brain by promoting neuroplasticity. In a study at UCLA in 2009, it was shown that people that actively practiced meditation showed a reduced size of the amygdala, the part responsible in our brain for fear and stress. And they showed that to those people, the prefrontal cortex was strengthened, which is the part in our brain responsible for decision-making and positive thinking. This study was later backed by Harvard University in 2012, where scientists literally measured the reduction in the size of the amygdala by having participants have an 8-week course of mindfulness. Therefore, we have all of this scientific evidence, and you can see that by me practicing these techniques, I was literally reshaping my brain into conditioning it to believe what I wanted it to believe. As long as you keep having these meditation practices in your life, you can decide which mental narratives to focus on. For me, this technique became my compass, guiding me through every storm. Of course, there were also challenges, and where I had to learn how to change my perspective. In order for me to change my perspective, I had to really experience the emotions in which I was living. There were moments where the physical pain was incredible. The treatment was very difficult. Chemotherapy sessions every 2 weeks. It was relentless, leaving my body with very little time to recover in between. I even ended up at the emergency room 4 times when my body bore the brunt of each treatment. I decided to go on and see the positivity in every challenge that I had. However, sometimes it was strong. The physical toll was profound. I no longer looked like myself. There were moments where I would see myself and not recognize because my body was bloated from all the medications. My hair, eyebrows, eyelashes were all gone. My skin had lost its elasticity. I was not myself anymore physically. And it wasn't just skin deep. I kept looking at myself while chemo attacked every single cell, good or bad. And this was even internal. There wasn't even a single part of my body that was not touched. All my muscles, my organs, my permanent nerve damage, even my mind were affected by this treatment. I had to adapt. I had to adapt in what I called challenges. I called them challenges. However, during all of this time that I was going through this hard treatment, I had to get myself alive, let's put it in parentheses. As the treatment went on, I even contracted COVID twice, adding another layer of difficulty to my journey to recovery. But within all of these challenges, I decided to see the positivity and the lessons they held. So I went on and kept using my techniques. In one beautiful day, I decided to ask myself, not why me, as in implying I was the victim of my circumstances. I asked myself, why me? There must be a reason for this. What is one thing that I can learn from this? How can this help me grow? By this way, I was conditioning my brain to see in the circumstances possibilities. Of course, this can be easier said than done. So, over time, I did develop a golden formula that I like to call it. this golden formula consisted of 3 main steps: to recognize, reframe, and switch. However, in this mental switch, there were a lot of challenges that came within it, because a cancer journey is not an easy journey. Immediately, I decided to have this golden formula in my mind by having the steps that I made for myself. The first step consisted of recognizing. I immediately started to realize that whenever you get a very hard moment in your life, you have to recognize the emotions that come with it, no matter how negative they are. Whether it's stress, anxiety, or fear, embrace them and live them. Identify the emotions while you externalize the challenge. By externalizing the challenge, you can use meditation in this moment that can help you ground and recenter you and make you realize that those feelings don't define you. As well, the second step to the golden formula is to reframe. By reframing our emotions and by using visualization techniques, so this is the key here, you can use visualization techniques to help you reframe your emotions. You transport yourself to the future. You experience the emotions of the future, and you fully believe in this vision and you affirm it. This is where you make your circumstances from ones containing fear to ones containing possibilities. The third step to the golden formula is to switch. This switch that I talk about is about once you've reframed and recognized your emotions, you recenter and you recognize the negativity and you press the mental switch. The recentering you can do with meditation and visualization. It's this process that leads to the mental switch. The powerful, intentional act of choosing which story to focus on. During this time that I had the challenges, I also learned how to change my perspective, as I mentioned before. And by doing this, I sought positivity within all the negative scenarios. I didn't let the illness define me. I decided to separate the cancer from me. I never called it my cancer. I took that out. This was an illness that would not define me. I was who I was, and I was going to remain the same. By doing this, I detached myself from the illness, and I made myself believe that I could fully control the condition that I was in. So I was intentionally switching off the negative scenario. And as I said, it's this process that leads to the mental switch. The powerful, intentional act of choosing your mental narratives and switching off the ones that don't serve you. But how does this mental switch work? I need to explain this to you a bit because I think this is one of the most important steps to actually thrive through challenges. Our brains are like computers, that they run whatever program we feed them. Most people don't realize we can rewrite the code. We can be intentional about which mental scripts to turn off and which ones to replace them with in order to focus on what we really want, to focus on the mental narratives that drive us forward. We can look at adversity as something that happens for us, not as something that happens to us. We can look at it as a teacher that is there for us to open up the possibilities that lie within our challenges. Immediately, this shift in perspective changes everything because it shifts your brain also from focusing to one of fear to one of action. Let me give you an example. Imagine you got some bad news. Everybody has challenges and pressures in daily life. So let's say you got a health scare, a job loss, or something else unexpected happened to you. Well, immediately your first thought might have been, what if this ruins everything now? Well, let's reframe that thought. How about I tell you that you can ask yourself, what is one thing you can do to move forward from this? This is where you see you are not thinking of fear anymore. You are thinking of the steps to take and the action to take to reach in the future. As well, I did myself this, but there's one important key here. You have to always substitute all the negative narratives with something positive. For me, it was the vivid mental image of myself living the life I wanted and I deserved. And this is how I guided myself to the future. As sapiens, we are wired to survive and adapt. But what if by telling all this, I am telling you that we can switch our mental narratives and reprogram our brains to thrive? So not only to survive, but to thrive and experience the emotions of success and health amidst life's challenges. And there's the best part in there. The story isn't over until we decide it is. And this might seem strange. And what do I mean by that? We have the power to keep choosing the story we deserve by pressing off all the negativity in our lives. We can fully restructure our brains, and as it was found scientifically, even physically restructure our brains. We can be intentional about which story to choose. So in this case, if we think of positivity, if we reprogram our minds and switch off the negativity of all that is found in our challenges, we remain the authors of our own story. The ending is up to us. Thank you.